When I was in college in the mid 90s, one of the musicians that we spent a lot of time listening to was Jimmy Buffett. I even had the opportunity to see him once in concert. It was a ton of fun. And you may recall that Jimmy Buffett passed away in 2023. And before he died, he had accumulated a musical empire of $275 million. And he had his hands in a lot of things. He had restaurants, he had condo developments, and neighborhoods, communities. So he built this, tremendous empire. And after he passed away, his family wound up having a huge dispute over his estate. So today I'm going to talk to you about how you can avoid some of the same mistakes that Jimmy Buffett made. You're going to learn 3 important lessons from Jimmy Buffett's estate plan so that your legacy can be one of peace, not conflict. Now, Buffett was one of the most successful entertainers and entrepreneurs of that, time period from, I think, back in the 70s, putting out music. But I really remember him from my time in college in the 90s. And then he continued to tour and produce music and all the other things that he did, right up until his death. And he was very successful. But because he didn't have his trust set up the right way, even though he had extensive planning done, because it wasn't set up the right way, there's now a family feud going. I'm estate planning attorney Mike Smith with Smith Barid LLC, and one half of the estate planning guys. So Buffett named his wife and his longtime business manager as co-trustees of his trust. And after he passed away, they had a disagreement about how things should be handled. And that led to court filings, accusations back and forth, and a stalled what we call trust administration. So that is, after someone passes away, the process of distributing assets out of the trust. So the lesson that we can take from this is that it's important to choose trustees who are not only trustworthy, see it's right there in the name, trustees, trustworthy, but you also want to choose people who are likely to collaborate. So a neutral or professional trustee can help avoid this kind of personal conflict. So when we use the term professional trustee, what we're talking about is someone who is in the business of providing trustee services. And there are different people, companies that you can find to assist you with that. There are, for example, oftentimes banks have trust departments. There are companies whose sole business is to provide trust and fiduciary services. Sometimes an attorney can serve as a trustee, a CPA could serve as a trustee, but it's a neutral third-party professional who is not personally invested in the trust, and it's going to help avoid that kind of personal conflict that's come up for the trustees of Jimmy Buffett's trust. The second thing that you need to be sure of is that you plan ahead for potential conflicts and that you provide a way in the trust to resolve conflicts. Now, Jimmy Buffett's trust provided lifetime income for his wife, with the remainder to go to their children, but it didn't include a conflict resolution plan. And because it didn't spell out exactly what would happen in the event of a conflict, the only option was to file lawsuits. And so there were multiple lawsuits filed in different states, and we've got kind of a duel between the court who's going to have jurisdiction, be in charge of this trust. So it's important to build in dispute resolution mechanisms into the trust, like mediation or arbitration, or a backup trustee who can resolve disagreements privately and efficiently, so that you don't have to go to court to resolve any kind of conflicts that come up in the context of trust administration. So oftentimes we'll include provisions in the trust that require mediation before filing a lawsuit. And that goes a long ways towards helping families resolve disputes when sometimes inevitably disputes arise. Now, Buffett's trust earned over $14 million in income in about 18 months, but the distribution to his beneficiaries was limited and therefore taxed very heavily. Trust income tax rates rise quickly. They're what we call compressed. So requirement to pay taxes starts at a lower level than it does for personal income taxes. And so without making strategic distributions from the trust, more money remains in the trust income not distributed, and that causes the taxes for your family to be higher than if the income were distributed out of the trust. And there can be reasons not to distribute income out of the trust, but just you need to consider the distribution strategy that you're setting up along with your estate's complete picture of financial and tax planning to protect the full value of your money. You don't want to have to pay taxes that you don't need to pay. Sometimes there are circumstances around things like spendthrifts or special needs loved ones that necessitate keeping the income in the trust, and that's fine. You don't want to let the tax tail wag the dog, as they say, but it's important to consider, what is the tax picture look like? How can we reduce taxes if possible? So, lessons that we can learn from Jimmy Buffett's estate. The first one is carefully select trustees who can work together. Not just trustworthy people, but people who can collaborate and work together to administer the trust. Secondly, prepare for future disputes before they happen. So include things like mediation or arbitration clauses in your trust that will require any parties that have a dispute to go through a mediation process before they file a lawsuit. And number 3, work with your professional team to align the tax, income, and legacy goals of your plan. So Jimmy Buffett, he planned a lot. He just missed a few details in his planning, and I'm not blaming Jimmy for it. I think maybe his advisors didn't necessarily give him the best advice. But you don't need to be a celebrity to learn from this story. This is 3 things that you can take away that will help you improve your estate plan. If you want to make sure that your plan leads to peace of mind and not problems, click like, hit, and subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you need help building or reviewing your plan, reach out to Barid. We're here to help you make smart, lasting decisions.